I think one of the things that I sort of bring to everyone's attention is that we tried to structure this in such a way that you could see sort of the spectrum of investment types, sort of going down the table left to right. Cyanide Ventures, I didn't mention, we don't have a fund. We're just investing off of our balance sheet. So we would sit somewhere in the middle physically if we were to have done this appropriately. But then again, it requires showing up on time, and you know how I am about that. So one of the things that Eric touched upon that I'm curious to hear from the panel is this notion of doing corporate spin-outs. And I'm curious for everyone on the team here, on top of your team, is there someone that's doing tech transfer, commercialization of intellectual property within your health system? Sarah?
Yes, we do have a tech transfer office that handles sort of IP. We have a number of cases where there's internal IP. We stand up sort of a company around our internal innovator, whether a clinician or a researcher, and we'll work very closely with the tech transfer office in preparing for spin out, but we'll, as an accelerator, are very involved in sort of helping form a team, hiring the CEO, and doing all the necessary sort of go-to-market components and preparing for that spin-out. So we have a great relationship with our tech transfer office in that regard.
And I'm curious, for your selection process, is having intellectual property co-developed at the hospital system a benefit to perhaps one of the entrepreneurs or startups in the room? Is it something they should be thinking about as a way to get their foot in the door?
It could be. For us, we sort of see the accelerator as a way to access external innovation. So we've always thought of the accelerator program and our tech transfer program as existing in parallel. And there's opportunity for crossover, but it's sort of not necessary for someone to have co-developed IP with us. We are looking to bring in a lot of external IP and sort of have access to that through the accelerator program.
We have a tech transfer office. We do generate a ton of intellectual property internally within Northwell. But I'll tell you from an investment standpoint, those are really hard to do. So internal tech transfer is really difficult to do in large healthcare organizations. For every external investment that we make, meaning for most of you guys here, we always like to add intellectual property, and I've got a CEO that's sitting right here that's a portfolio company, so keep me honest. I would say in a lot of our cases, we are adding subject matter experts, and every transaction that we get into is early enough where we are bringing those SMEs in at the table to help on product development, to help on research, and it adds a significant amount of intellectual property to the company.
What is it that you're trying to do in order to convince that entrepreneur to take Innova's money and to partner with Innova rather than any of the rest of us at the table?
Particularly at the seed stage, Innova is a seed fund that brings you coaching, some curriculum to help you sort of understand or imbue you with a vision for a business that will allow you to be successful and raise money longer term, a customer, which is probably the most difficult thing for an early stage company to get. And from a health system perspective, how we would differentiate ourselves, I think, so compared to what you might see at other health systems, I mean, there are three of us at ISI, and we're all entrepreneurs. We've all been at companies at the inception stage. We've all been at companies at the exit stage. In some cases, very big ones. And so I think there's an incredible amount of empathy that we have, not only sort of knowledge of the sort of roadmap, but in my case certainly knowledge of all the mistakes you could possibly ever make in building a startup to help our companies avoid them.
And anything that you would add, sort of looking at the partnership between Cedars-Sinai and the Techstars program along with Summation Ventures in terms of how you're trying to sit there and differentiate yourself from perhaps other accelerators that are out there nationally, as well as other sort of investment opportunities that these entrepreneurs might be able to seize?
Sure. I think one of the things we try very hard and successfully do is to pair the companies that we work with executive sponsors and executive mentors at Cedars. So if we have a company that's coming in with a nursing-focused product, we get approval from our chief nursing officer, and she's going to be working with them on a consistent basis to give feedback now. So really having that buy-in from the organization and not siloing it to just working with an innovation team or just working with a few individual clinicians, but really working with people at the high levels of the organization.
So I think for a lot of people in the room, they're looking for the folks sitting at this panel as sort of the gateway into our institution, and not necessarily for the financial investment or for the accelerator program, but frankly for the client relationship. Right. And they see this as sort of an additional benefit, but not necessarily the real target here. I'm curious for you all, and feel free to chime in, I won't call out anyone specifically, is that an accurate perception to have?
Our number one objective is to get venture returns. The second bottom line is driving or accelerating the insertion of innovation into our health system. Innova has not historically been an innovative health system, and we are one of the things that they're doing to try to change that.
We shepherd companies through the system in a very meaningful way, from procurement to clinical. But we also leverage our internal folks for due diligence. So we have to, our individuals, there's an educational process, and you guys should appreciate this. Being on the inside, the first reaction is always no, generally speaking. Whether it's procurement, whether it's clinical, any change to existing workflow, whether it's positive or negative, first reaction is generally no.
Second reaction too.
Yeah. So our job, and I would say, one of my jobs is really to help educate the organization. If you ask our CEO, what is our primary objective? We're catalysts of change management of our organization. We are there, and if we're not ruffling feathers of these different fiefdoms throughout the system, whether it's procurement, whether it's our chief quality officer, if we're not ruffling feathers, we're not really doing our job. So our job is really to help shepherd these companies through, but also leverage the assets of the system for due diligence to make good investments. So we underwrite strategic return and financial return. And every investment that we make has to have a venture class type of return. But it does have to enable the mission and strategy of our system in some way, shape, or form.
Our team, it's interesting, we have sort of a group that focuses much more on digital strategy for the enterprise, so implementing innovative health tech solutions for the organization. And then the accelerator is a separate program. We don't want to be limited just to pediatrics. We don't want to be limited just to solutions that the hospital will ultimately implement, because as Eric's saying, health systems are slow and not all that able to push the boundaries oftentimes on the enterprise level. So our accelerator operates independently in that regard. There are a number of success stories where we've been able to help develop, very early stage seed company through to later stage where they've gotten follow-on funding, et cetera, and then been able to actually roll them out on the hospital enterprise level.
We want to make sure we see sort of a path to potentially using the solution in the future, but we use the accelerator program as part of the due diligence process to say, is this an organization that we do want to work with? And I would say over sort of the lifetime, we're on our 4th accelerator class right now. About half of the companies we've worked with have gone on to pilot at Cedars, and about 1/3 of them have gone on to commercial contracts.
Now, see, at Sinai, I'm absolutely not the gateway into the institution. I'm only investing in things that I'm finding are already being used, have had some level of due diligence or evaluation by a subject matter expert within the institution, and that probably has something to do with our size. So if a company is coming to you all, what is it, let me restate the question, what is it that you all are looking for right now? What are you excited about from a theme standpoint? What kind of solutions are you getting pressure from your colleagues to try to find? Non-emergency medical transportation was a hot thing. I get a lot of calls from chatbot companies, and what are you at conferences like this looking for?
It's interesting, we're looking for, I think the thing that piques the most interest for me is not necessarily patient-facing or front-end clinician tools, but we always find it interesting to find things that are supporting the rest of the health system, so things in supply chain, things in billing, things in administration, HR, those sorts of tools. In terms of sort of specific areas, really anything that can help with cost savings. So we're looking for a hard ROI.
I think themes that are important to our health system, cancer, anything related to our Cancer Institute, which is a major investment for our health system, cardiovascular, anything related to that. Women's health is also going to be an emerging theme for probably the next 5 years for us. So anything around women's health is important. I think from an investment perspective, less what's being driven by the system strategically, but in the category that you might be in, we're looking for capital efficiency. We're, what I would say is old school venture investors. We're looking for companies that can, where the denominator doesn't have to be a large number in order for me to get a good exit.
I'd say we are particularly interested in one theme, although we do develop investment themes every year that we'd like to attack and go after. What we will not go after is highly capital-intensive businesses. So pharma, class 3 device, implantable devices. We will look at it. We do have expertise in that.
I wanted to ask this question earlier, and I got so excited I skipped ahead. How long does it take to go through your process? Be it the selection process for the accelerator or for the investment process? Mine is a lifetime.
That's a great question. We have a couple rounds for the accelerator. I will be honest. A couple rounds for the accelerator every year. The first step in the process is applying online. We have a pretty robust application for applying to the accelerator, and we have a committee that reviews them. From there, there's a phone screen. There's a invite for a pitch in person if that's deemed as a good next step. That would bring in necessary sort of clinical champions and folks from within the hospital to further vet from, is this an actual pain point? Is this something that we would potentially utilize in the hospital? It can take anywhere from a month to 6 months, probably, depending on where in the application round.
Realistically, most of the companies that participate in our accelerator program, we've been talking to for 9 months to a year.
Our accelerator program is a curriculum. It's a 12-week curriculum. We run in the fall and the spring. It is open. We give that away. It is the top of our funnel. We don't require you to give us equity in order to become part of the program. So the investment cycle is always, especially for the $75,000 investment, one of the great things about making small investments is you can really take a lot of risk.
I'd say our fastest that we've completed the transaction is about 4.5 months. Our longest is probably about 12 months. We target 60 to 90 days like any institutional investor. The reality is there's 8,000 challenges that pop up from all the different stakeholders to the investment committees that we have to go through and boxes that we do check.
So tell us about some of those challenges. I'm curious, where have you guys seen an entrepreneur come in, a startup idea be introduced, and have it just abjectly fail? What went wrong? Where did they go wrong?
They don't heed our warning. I think we know the system well. We know healthcare very well. We know investing very well. And in a lot of cases, I caution you guys, just as entrepreneurs, be persistent, but don't be so persistent that you will not accept no for an answer. It makes the entrepreneur look stupid, and in an attempt, I think, to undermine what we do, it just doesn't end up well. And it's probably the shortest way, fastest way to kill your chances at one, an investment, and two, even a procurement contract.
But just coming in from the top, just because you happen to know that person or have a connection, doesn't help. Genuine interest is great. Getting in the door that way doesn't give an advantage over anyone else and can be really irritating. Beneficial. We see a lot of entrepreneurs who want to move really quickly and they want to expand rapidly and kind of can get ahead of themselves sometimes, especially early stage companies who maybe don't have experience supporting really large organizations.
There is definitely this mentality of sort of death by pilot, and oftentimes entrepreneurs will come into the health system. They'll find a key clinical champion. Often they'll be married to that clinical champion. That clinical champion has a great title because everybody at Mount Sinai is the chief of something. I'm the chief of venture. And as a result, the entrepreneur feels that this champion is going to be able to sit there and usher them through the entire process and has control of a budget, that they have their hands on purse strings. And the reality is they absolutely don't, and they don't even know anyone in procurement. How do you diversify your relationships across the organization when you find that key clinical champion? How do you have that conversation with them to get them to start introducing you to the other key stakeholders? And then how do you do your homework in advance to make sure who you're working with actually is the appropriate person and indeed has the authority that goes along with that title?
For all that people say they're really, really excited about a solution, they're excited, they won't pay $10,000 for a pilot. Our companies offer them all the time to a level that's surprising to me of we'll just do it for free, and it isn't a genuine validation of their product. So we ask that the stakeholder who would be paying for the full product pay for the pilot, and that eliminates a lot of unnecessary pilots.
We have this great digital health team in our IT department. What they do is evaluation. They come up with rankings. They'll say, of the 25 solutions, these are the 3 that we like. And then some urologist will walk in the door and be like, I'm using number 24. And you're like, well, why? Why are you using this? Who did you talk to? But we can't keep them from doing it.
Yeah.
It is unbelievably aggravating.
It is.
So as an entrepreneur, it's important to know that you might not be loved, even though you might have penetrated the system. Do our organizations entertain data partnership programs if it doesn't fall in line with the life cycle of our accelerator programs or investment timelines?
I would say we're a bit unique in that we don't have a start date and an end date for our relationship with a company that enters our accelerator. It's very much a fluid relationship. We will work with you sort of outside of a standard timeline from that perspective.
Do you guys do data sharing agreements with companies outside of the accelerator?
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Does anyone here not do sort of data licensing agreements?
Not typically, no.
No.
There might be occasional rare exceptions, but it wouldn't be something we would. Especially we get approached by a lot of AI startups looking for training data, and I don't think we've turned them all down.
Which is that a lot of us are sitting on data, but a lot of our data is really messy. And in order to actually put it into some sort of format that's usable requires a tremendous amount of work. Whether or not we're able to do that remains to be seen. How important is it that mobile applications are able to integrate with our enterprise electronic health record solutions? We're an Epic shop, so it's impossible. I'm curious, Boston Children's, real quick, what EHR is everyone on?
Epic and Cerner.
Epic and Cerner, you're in Allscripts down at the end there?
Allscripts,
Yeah, we actually have 11 EHRs still, but we're going towards Epic.
Running a pilot without full buy-in from the system is really hard. And from a technology standpoint, it's really difficult because it represents real costs on our end.
How difficult it is to get the pilot done. Full disclosure, I think we're sort of getting up the learning curve. When it comes to that, I think we recognize in order to keep up from a quality of care perspective, we have to be able to do this. We don't have the infrastructure in place yet.
EMR integration, it depends on the application. So we certainly have supply chain and asset tracking apps that are in our accelerator that don't integrate at all. Anything that our clinicians are using, we would want integrated.
Our segment in the industry in terms of strategic investment from hospitals as well as our innovation and accelerator programs are becoming increasingly more sophisticated. And that this is something that's new, but certainly something that's growing. All of us are on a call, coincidentally on a monthly basis. There's about 20 of us on the call. I know Eric's team over the summer had an intern that evaluated, I think, about 40 hospitals that have some sort of investment accelerator type program across the country. And it's growing. And it's growing to a degree because it's a vanity project and there's a lot of ego involved in hospital systems and everybody wants one. And it's growing because there's a real opportunity for us to capture value and diversify revenue in a way that we haven't been able to do historically. And with sort of the ever-changing landscape of healthcare payments, we need to find ways to go and do that. The other big takeaway I have from our conversation this morning is around working through the program rather than trying to work around the program, and that there's a lot of benefit here. Many of these teams, with the exception of mine, have deep benches and clearly have the resources necessary to be able to help your company get through these very complex, large, bureaucratic, and sometimes frustrating systems. And there's a lot to be said about partnering thoughtfully and really paying attention to who it is that's shepherding you through that program, ensuring that they're the appropriate partner and that they have the right access and buy-in. I cannot thank the folks at Life Science Nation enough for the opportunity for us to come and speak, and I am so humbled by the panelists here for joining us today. It's always an honor to be with all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.